Hey guys, Stacy here with Artisan Design Concepts, and I'm going to do a light wood grain sample board right now, and I've been asked a lot how I do my wood grain, so I'm doing extra samples today and I thought I would record it. So I'm just going to focus on the board and show you what I did. All right, so I have mixed with my epoxy smoky beige, French beige, dark taupe, almond, and sand. And sand I have used less of, okay? I started with a tan board. God, I can't even think of the name of the paint that we use on that. I fogged it with a variety of the colors that I used today, just so that way it can flow over the edges. When you're doing a striation, you're gonna have lots of pour over here, but not so much here on the front edges, okay? So let me tilt this down a little more so you can see it, hopefully. There you go, slightly, hopefully. All right, so. I already fogged the board. Just gonna wipe down the fog spray paint. The dust off of here. All right, so I'm gonna start with my darker color. This is the dark taupe. And I am just going to kind of get an idea of how wide I want my lines to be. And I'm just going to bring the epoxy over the edges. Like so. I typically mix a little extra when I have to do striations or pour a bunch in cups, because you often want a little extra to throw in there. Sometimes it feels like you don't have enough. Okay, once you have some on the board, leave some in your cup so that way when you need more, you know what color you're sort of lacking in, and you can go back and add it. And I'm going to do my, I don't know what this is, let's see, smoky beige maybe. And the goal is to keep this really light, a really light wood grain. So I'm using all light colors. Now don't worry if your lines aren't totally straight, because you're gonna get them straight. You can also let the epoxy set up in your cup a little longer, because it's gonna wanna move and spread out. And I've been asked, how do you keep it so fine instead of looking, you know, like wide bands? So I'll show you that. Now, if you're gonna do this on a bigger surface, clearly you don't need to sit here with your popsicle stick spreading your colors. You can just take it and like this and pour it, and you can do that on your sample board too. As long as you have pretty good control over it, otherwise you can end up dumping too much out. Now I use the least amount of sand on this because I don't want this to turn peach, and sand can really turn this peachy quick. I did another board before and it was really too peachy for a light wood grain, but I do want a little of that warmth in there. But that's why I chose to use less of that than any other color. And then whatever you have left, go ahead and get that on your board. I'm saving the darkest color that I already started with for last so that I can come back up to the top. The leftovers. All right, so I'm going to heat this up. And now the goal here is not to blend it all together, but you need to make sure that anywhere you see empty board that you're putting epoxy. Okay, so I'm going to go with my fingers first and push and use anything that's my drips and stuff to come off the sides. Anywhere that I've over poured on the edge. And then I'm going to use that same drip to come over the other front edge since it doesn't really pour over very well on the striation. To this, put this on this side. And just make sure that I've got everything flowing over onto the sides. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for the front or the back to you. All right, now you're just gonna heat it again a little bit. And then blend in where you don't see epoxy on your board. And just gently with your finger, just kind of fill in those spots. Take a little of the epoxy from the surrounding area, but don't overblend because you still want those colors to be separated. Push it into it. If you don't get every spot, that's okay. You're gonna hit it when you get your stick going, but you don't want a bunch of empty spots or you're just scratching your board or your counter. Now you can do this with bigger bands of color if you wanted, same format, same, style and technique. You can just pour them thicker. It's just really up to you, the look that you're going for. All right, I feel like I got most spots covered. No huge gaps. All right, now I'm going to take my stick, this size, thin. The little tiny popsicle sticks I feel are actually thicker. So I want skinny lines here, and you're just going to straight move your stick back and forth, pushing those colors together, and they will slowly start to blend. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect your first pass, because I like to go back over it several times. So I'm at the first part just trying to get the color to start moving and interacting with each other. And then I go back and continue to get those lines as straight as possible. And then you can add knots in there if you'd like, and I can show you how to do that too. Now, because epoxy wants to self-level, a lot of this will start to spread out. And if you want real fine lines, you may have to play with this for much longer than a normal piece, even past like the 1 hour time. As it starts to tack up, if you want your lines super, super fine, you'd go in there and continue to work it to keep those lines straight and thin. If you just walk away, it's going to slowly spread out almost like a marble. And really you have to notice that for the most part on your edges, because that's where it's gonna wanna flow over the most. And so even if you like the way the rest looks, come back, don't walk away from it too soon. Keep your eye on it for quite some time and look at those edges. If they start to flow over and they look, you know, marbly, you can, even when it's pretty tacky, you can come take a paint stick right through it. Now I can see where I have missing epoxy, so I'm just gonna touch it with my stick to make sure that it flows into those holes, especially on my edges, since you're not chopping this out like a normal counter. And there's a little straggler or something in there. You don't want to over torch a wood grain, because again, every time you torch it, it's going to spread and spread and spread. So right now it's pretty darn good, but I want it even thinner, those striations. And so I work it a little bit. I'm going to take out more stragglers. Now, when you go back and forth like this, it almost creates its own little like knotting. And so because wood grain isn't all totally straight, it has, you know, it ebbs and flows. It doesn't have to be totally straight, but you don't want it to curve either, like massively. Use my dark color, a little dark right here. And this is why you keep a tiny bit in your cup to break up if there's too big of a chunk of light. You're like, I really want a little dark. You just keep a little bit in your cup to add that back in. Now, you don't want to do this too many times because you'll start to blend the colors so much you won't see the difference and it'll kind of marble. So if you want to see your difference in colors, you do this just enough, let it set up, touch it a little where you need to, like just do little lines, tiny, you know, effects, and then leave it alone. I also suggest after you're done striating to walk to the other side of your board and look from another angle to see if it is truly going straight or at an angle, because I'll tell you, it always looks straight to me, and then I realize my arm is tilting or my stick is tilting, and then I walk over and it's at a total angle. Now by letting your epoxy set up in your cup for a little bit, you can make sure this doesn't move as much and you have to work it a little bit less. We've got another straggler. That looks pretty darn good. I'm gonna stand over and take a look. Fix anything that I feel is kind of going crooked. Like that. Looking good. Check my edges. And if you need to, just add some epoxy to your edges and let it drip straight down. And it'll just look like a normal line. I always add a little extra to my corners, even to sample boards, but especially on counters, because when you go to hone it, it will burn through. So this makes sure you don't do that. Looks pretty good. All right, I think that's pretty good. So hope you guys like that. Hope it helped. If you're gonna do a knot on there, you would take your stick and you will spin it around here. You would just take a little of your dark color and then just slowly move it in a circular fashion. Just keep working it till you are happy. All right, hope that helped, guys.